When race teams want to remove the engine, they take the hood off the car. The hood hinges remain sticking up, waiting for the hood to be bolted back on. On my K&K insurance car, I wanted to replicate that look of the hinges being up when the hood is off, but still be able to display it with the hood on and easily switch between the two. I call these floating hood hinges because they don't have springs. I'm going to show you the 2 secrets on how to make these. This is my replica of Bobby Isaac's Dodge Daytona. I built it 35 years ago. It's been a contest winner for me, and it's been on the shelf and survived really well. Brandon from Mile High Scale Modeler saw this model in our video on making travel boxes and asked about the hood hinges. Check out his channel, the link is in the description. It's harder to see and much harder to photograph a fully detailed engine when the hood is attached and angled over it. It blocks the light and gets in the way, so it's convenient to display it with the hood completely off. So I wanted the hinges to lay down when the hood is closed and then pop up when the hood is removed and stay up. Here is an example of a hinge from a Danbury Mint diecast. This is how the hinge articulates. To make this easier to accomplish, I'm not having the hinges hold the weight of the hood when it's open. The hinge doesn't have to be strong enough to support the weight of the hood, or rigid enough to hold it once opened, or have a complicated attachment mechanism. In fact, the hinges are not attached to the hood at all. This is secret number 1. The hinges are there just for looks. I'm using this Pontiac as a prop to show how you can make a hinge for pretty much any car. I made this J-shaped hinge in the same style as I have on my model, and that represents what ran on the car in the spring of 1969. It does not replicate a Daytona factory hood hinge. The J hinge was cut from styrene plastic sheet. I also needed a mounting plate. This is a good thickness to work with. I drilled a hole the brass rod will go through. That's the pivot point. I cut a longer section of plastic tube and 3 shorter sections. The longer section will attach to the car. 2 will straddle the hinge and 1 will be an end cap. I glued the 2 tube sections on either side of the hinge. These will slide over the rod attached to the car to freely pivot. I cut the brass rod and mounted it on the car. One end of the J-hinge has a mounting plate that replicates the part the hood would be bolted to. Here is secret number 2. There is no spring. The hinge has a weight on the end and is simply balanced on a pivot point. The weight is a counterweight. This counterweight is made of a steel screw head. It could be a sliver of a fishing weight or a magnet or any small, heavy bit of something. Slip the hinge onto the brass rod on the car. Glue the end cap on so the hinge can't fall off. The weight is calibrated so the hinge gently floats up when released from the down position. If you don't want to make one from scratch, you can modify a kit hinge to do the same thing. I cut the end off an old X-Acto blade as a counterweight. I glued the weight onto the hinge. The kit hinge needs a heavier counterbalance weight than the J hinge, so I added some magnets. I glued a piece of sheet plastic as an extension, then glued 2 sections of plastic tube to make a pivot point. I slid it onto the rod on the car just like I did with the J hinge. I can't extend it too far because it might interfere with the dashboard or the firewall. That's why I had to mount it closer to the pivot point. I really like the look of the hinges in the up position. If you try this, let me know in the comments how it worked out. Follow your muse wherever you may find it, and may there always be a project on your bench. Thanks for watching. And it's fun to play with.